I'm going to get us started. My name is Margie Dorhorst. I'm a consulting teacher and a curriculum instructional designer, both part-time for the Center for Responsive Schools. And my background in education is I was a principal and a speech and language pathologist and a gifted and talented teacher, all pre-pandemic. So I have no idea exactly how I would have done any of those things in the world that you're in. But what I do know is for 20 years, I put responsive classroom in place in the schools, both as an educator and as a leader. And that was my lens for everything that came my way. So I know those of you signing in are either familiar with responsive classroom and want to just have an hour to talk about how we can make classrooms still powerfully inviting for students in this age of the pandemic, or you're new to responsive classroom or hearing just about it for the first time and are curious. So this is for both of you, regardless of where you come to us from. And joining me is Karen Poplowski, our host. She'll be helping out as well. So when you see some responses from either me or Karen, we're both here. We want you to be successful to start your new school year. So as you came into this work in responsive classroom and decided to sign up for this classroom organization workshop, in thinking of what you already know about setting up a classroom or a school to be successful, whether you're doing an in-person school, so it's socially distanced, or whatever requirements that are being made for your school to be healthy and safe, or you're doing this virtually, so you're presenting to a group that's working from their home environment, or hybrid or asynchronous, any of those formats are going to result in some type of need of classroom organization. So take a look at the goals for this webinar and reflect on these goals and what you hope will help you be successful with your classroom organization this year. In responsive classroom approach, classroom organization is a practice. We teach it directly to our participants in our 4-day workshops, and it's a valuable part of what we do in the responsive classroom. I want you to jot down a goal right now, a hope that you hope you can do with your classroom organization to be successful this year in light of all the challenges that we're working on right now. And the strategy I'm using with you is going to be some of this think and pause, so you can do some reflecting. So you'll have time in this webinar to have time to do some thinking and reflecting for your own classroom or your school or your virtual approach. And you'll also get a chance to do some connecting with other professionals. So you'll see that last goal, connect with other educators. The beauty of Zoom is the ability to do breakout rooms. So later on, the work that we do, you'll get a chance to share with other educators as well. Goals have needs. So as you've been thinking about your goal for classroom organization, I want you to just take a moment to think about what needs or challenges that you see in particular this year for classroom organization. In March, when you got thrown into a virtual approach, probably all of you, we didn't have a time to set that up to be successful. We know in the responsive classroom approach, one of our goals is to set that up successfully by being proactive. We get that chance right now. So what are the needs so we can be proactive in addressing them? And again, I'm going to pause and give you some time to jot down those needs. I'm going to stop share for a moment. There's a bunch of us. And on the bottom of your toolbar for Zoom, you have an option to chat. So if you look at the about in the middle, there's a button that says chat. If you click on that, you can chat with participants by clicking where it says to and seeing where it says everyone in the meeting. We're going to use this as a strategy to do a whole group share. So when you hit everyone in the meeting where it says everyone, type in what's one need that you're hoping to address in this webinar. What's one thing you're hoping to? We'll see that grow to see what the needs are we're hoping to address. So I see some particular to the roles that you have, and I see some particular to responsive classroom. Still trying to fulfill that community building and keeping kids engaged. I see some people trying to think, how am I going to do a morning meeting socially distanced? Positive teacher language, meeting emotional needs. and creating that community. Well, you're in the right place. Karen's going to link in our chat right now a form for you that we're going to use today. We're going to use a graphic organizer called a T-chart. So just a minute, she's going to link that form in. And if you click on the link, you'll be able to pull up that T-chart and use it on a screen that you have. Now you can create your own T-chart if you have difficulty doing two screens, because it's not very fancy. It's a chart that has a big T on it. And then on the top of one side, I'm going to show you a slide now that'll show that. So you'll see on the top of one side of that T that you'll get a chance to write the words more on the left side and less on the right side. So on top of your T, you can either jot in or type in on the cool thing that we have online, more or less. On the top of the T-chart above the words more and less, write the goal that you're trying to meet, the need you're trying to address. So through this webinar, we're going to go through the practices in responsive classroom that are connecting in your approach to reach those goals that you just said. So whether it's how to do morning meeting in a socially distanced virtual way, or how to keep students engaged when I know I'm going to be socially distanced or virtual. The goal that you just wrote, add that to the top. So we're going to walk through content that you would learn through the responsive classroom approach through a couple of different lenses. One lens is the COVID-19 lens. How are we going to create learning that fits the core belief and the goals of responsive classroom, and at the same time is safe, healthy, and making sure we're not doing anything to spread a disease at the same time? Those are all the health pieces are going to come from your school district and your health administrator. So I'm not talking health to you. I'm just talking about how we can use responsive classroom skills to make that appropriate. And if that approach is virtual, so you'll look through that lens. And I know most of you that are going into this, well, I'm not going to say that. I hear from many teachers going into this in the way that's in person are preparing for virtual just in case. It's like we see the writing on the wall. So you can think of both lenses. And know that the same content can also be used when we don't have these issues going on, but I want to focus on that. The other lens is the lens of equity. Responsive classroom has a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion at all times. And we're really even more aware of, in this time of these differences, how even more important equity is. So I'm going to use the same approaches and just put those in those same lenses. All right, the first thing you're seeing in front of you is our core belief. As educators, we know that our actions are driven by our beliefs. And when we can use those same beliefs to even drive our actions through the work that we're doing now, it's going to raise students up in this time of COVID. You probably have heard people say the gift of COVID sometimes when there's some hidden opportunity that happens during this challenging time. I'm not saying this is a gift. I'm saying that there's times that we might have some different opportunities that we wouldn't have had. So we can kind of think about those too. The same core belief, though, is going to drive our work regardless. So that in order to be successful, we know that all students need a set of social-emotional competencies and academic competencies. In the work and responsive classroom, we focus on both together at the same time. How do we do that? We do that through the practices of responsive classroom, morning meeting and responsive advisory meeting, interactive modeling, engaging academics, academic choice, all of those practices that we do to build community, to also effectively manage, and to do that through a developmentally responsive lens, while we're also making sure that we have students engaged in a positive community. So how is that going to look in the age of COVID and what we're doing about now? So I'm going to first talk about the social and emotional competencies. Responsive classroom focuses on the 5 social emotional competencies listed on the slide: cooperation, assertiveness, responsibility, empathy, and self-control. The first letter of each of those does make the word cares, has a COVID ring to it. You've heard that before. So with these 5 social emotional skills, in the work of responsive classroom, we directly teach these skills. We don't just expect kids to come with them or get frustrated when they don't. Teach them. So what might this look like in our classroom organization in the era of COVID? So maybe for cooperation, we're teaching students how to cooperate together in a small space while still keeping social distancing. Or if we're doing assertion, how can we teach students the skill of assertion to remind others politely to pull their mask up? Responsibility, we might teach students responsibility in a virtual setting to make sure they have a learning place where all their materials are handy so that when they're ready to start their class each day, they're present in front of them. And teaching empathy as a social skill. We can teach empathy as we talk about how hard it might be to walk through the hallways and be tempted to get closer to somebody or to give a hug. And that's hard, but showing that empathy for our safety at this time is important. And self-control, to say self-control at this time is for the safety of others. So self-control in our body movement so that we're giving enough space between other people can be a challenge, whether in the classroom or on the school bus. I want you to take a look at your need right now and decide, of that need, what of these social emotional skills and competencies are important to make sure that you teach to be successful to meet that need. Those 5 social emotional competencies, I also feel like are so important in that line of equity, that when students come into a diverse setting and they have different expectations, they haven't been in a school setting for 6 months, most likely. So knowing that we directly teach them and expect them to be successful with them and keep reaching is really important. In addition, then we have the 4 academic competencies. With the academic competencies, again, some of these are ones we take for granted that students have. I'm going to briefly talk about these and then talk about them in the era of COVID. An academic mindset, that students see themselves as being successful in school. Perseverance, persevering through a struggle. Learning strategies, ways to access learning, categorize learning, and make sure they can retrieve learning. And academic behaviors. They know the importance of being in school on time, being prepared, and why school, virtually or in person, is so important. Now, in the age of COVID, an academic mindset, I think I'm not gonna say all of us, many of us, to have that academic mindset to be successful with virtual school in March, we had to have that in our brain. It maybe took a little bit. And now we have students who may not have that academic mindset. They see themselves being successful in the model that we have. We need to help them see that all of them can be successful. Perseverance, learning is supposed to be a bit of a challenge. Some of the COVID learning we're doing maybe is even more of a challenge for some of our students. So how can we help them to be successful to move through that struggle? Learning strategies. Many times when students are in school in person with us, they rely on us for being their learning strategy. How can we prepare them with some skills to handle a problem with technology that they're struggling with, to find a resource in their home if they don't have it? Maybe they need a ruler and they don't have a ruler at home. So what could they do to do some measuring without a ruler? Some problem solving strategies. And academic behaviors, engaging students so they know the importance of attending even in a virtual meeting, to have their video on so that they can be seen, to mute and unmute. All of those important behaviors that are going to be successful for them in the virtual setting. So take a moment again to jot down what academic competencies are going to be important for students to be successful in your classroom organization goal. I'm now going to walk you through the 6 goals of classroom organization as a practice in responsive classroom. After we go through these 6 goals, I'm going to help you work with that T-chart and share with another participant. On the T-chart, it says more or less. As I take time to go through each of these goals in the eyes of COVID and equity, jot down some things that you want to do more in your classroom on the left side, and maybe some things that you want to minimize or do less. So with each of these, I'll pause each time And add to, this is basically in the end going to be an action plan for you. To have this to pull out, to look at and say, okay, I can see what more I want to do and put this in place right now and less. And then I'm going to say, tuck this away somewhere after you get into the school year a little bit and refer back to it. Because sometimes we get things set up and then there's new points. I didn't make a post with all 6 of these points, so if you want to jot these down, you can. But I really want you to think of the actions as well as the goals as you do this. So you go through each point, you have a little time for reflection, and after we go through all 6 points, you're going to be working with small groups to share. All right, the first goal of classroom organization is to welcome all children into your classroom or all children into your school. Whether that classroom is in person or virtual, they're still coming to your school in person or virtual. So what does that look like in the eyes of responsive classroom through COVID? First of all, there needs to be a place for every child, that they see that they're welcome inside that classroom. When we're doing social distancing, we probably have removed a lot of our furniture to make room so that each student can be 6 feet apart. As we're doing that, we want each child's place to still feel like it's welcoming and it's respectful for them. Sometimes when I've worked with teachers, and even more recently talked with this, we feel like we need to have everything there for them and ready to go to welcome them. And at the same time, for them to create the area that they're going to be working in is one of the ways that they build connection to school. In the responsive classroom approach, we do a lot of planning and working with children so they get that sense of feeling like they belong and significant. And it's kind of fun. So an example of this is one teacher said, I really want to have a theme for my classroom. Thought maybe like a carnival theme. And then as she got talking, she said, well, maybe I could ask the kids what theme they might want. So she ended up leaning on the idea of using the school mascot, the tigers. And she was going to make her classroom be the tiger den. And when students came in, they were going to decorate and make their space, because they're going to spend pretty much all day in that space, their desk that they had in their chair, have everything they need to be successful in the tiger den. So she wasn't going shopping to get all the doodads to make it look like a theme. She was going to help them create the habitat that they were going to be in, is what she talked about. Some other things about welcoming all children is what they see visually in the room. We encourage to remove those pre-printed posters or those things that we would end up buying, partly because kids tune them out right away, but we want kids to see themselves in that work. You see an example there where children have their own class timelines, their baby pictures up on the wall. So it's kind of a cute thing to see that students see themselves when they walk in the room. Or if they have artwork that they've made, to see that in the room. Having a library that has books that they can see students that resemble them in the books is really important. And represent different cultures, especially the cultures in our school. Have them be represented in the classroom. And remember, this is everybody's room. So sometimes when we create our classroom, we want it to look like us, our room. I was in a classroom one time when the teacher loved Winnie the Pooh. So everything in the room was Winnie the Pooh. She taught 5th grade. Probably wasn't a classroom that everybody loved Winnie the Pooh. Another classroom I was in, teacher painted it the color of her favorite sports team. I'm in Wisconsin. It was the Green Bay Packers. Not everybody likes to be in a green and gold classroom all day long. And virtually, do the same thing. If you're having a way to represent all the students when they come in and they see themselves, maybe it's a virtual tool that you're using that portrays some pictures or artwork or ideas that they've shared. When they see themselves in that classroom, that virtual room, they'll feel welcome there. And we can use this to teach academic mindset. I belong here. I can be successful. And also a sense of empathy. As we're making a room that welcomes all children, how can we make it a place that all children feel safe in and feel welcome in? Part of having empathy is making sure we're all following the rules of wearing our masks. Then we'll feel safe in there. So take a minute to jot down, what do you want to do more of in your classroom to make it more welcoming this year? What do you want to do less of? Take 30 seconds for that. A second goal of classroom organization is to value everyone's ideas and their work. One of the ways you'll see here are a couple of ways of using bulletin boards to have example of everybody's work. Sometimes, because this isn't created when you're going to have your open house, teachers might put over a bulletin board, noteworthy news or a sample of our learning, and then they'll have nothing on there and say coming soon or under construction. Another example I saw where teachers had just little clips hanging so students could easily hang something up and take it down. And another example I saw was a class where they were first graders, so they couldn't reach the clips. So the teacher went and bought all these little clipboards, and students had their name on them, and they could just add to their clipboard. It was interesting there because some of the students wanted to show off something they made. So they turned the clipboard sideways, and they had an example of something they made of Lego. So it became a display in that way. When I enter those rooms, when I visit schools, I love learning a little bit more about what students' interests are and things that they've done in other places in the school. It just shows that diversity of thought too. You can do the same thing in a virtual world too by using the text tools that you have for them to each create their own space, and especially if it's a way that you can share with others. As far as those social emotional competencies and academic competencies, this is a great way to teach the skill of responsibility. You're all responsible for once a week putting something new up on our "we like you to see our work" poster or see what we're learning. So each week, that's your job to put that to have responsibility for that. And it also helps with the competency of learning strategies, because students are going to look at what other students are doing, and they're going to learn that there are other people they can go to like, how did you do that? How did you figure that out? All right, take 30 seconds again to reflect on how you might show valuing everyone's ideas and their work. Here's the third goal: to support that active and engaged learning. Now, looking at classrooms are going to look differently if we're doing social distancing. You probably have gone through your classroom, if you haven't gotten in already, and removed as much furniture that isn't used, any storage, and tried to have students be safely apart. Some strategies I've heard from others that I think are worthy to share here. One idea someone had was to push desks against the wall more so that their open space was in the middle. So then when students were going to come for a morning meeting, if it was necessary, they could just turn from their desks and be part of a morning meeting. Or she had an idea that they could sit in front of their desks and then they already would be spaced apart. Another thought I've heard from people is to use that floor tape that you can sometimes get from the PE teacher to tape spaces and help kids with that measure, help kids help you with that measuring depending upon their age level, but that gives them a sense of responsibility and ownership as well. Another idea some people have said to try to keep it engaging was to involve students in what this classroom should look like to feel that they can still do their learning in that room. There are some tools on our website that show how to do a map of the classroom, like that bird's eye view, draw out where everything is. Most of the time teachers will do that on their own beforehand, but it'd be interesting to have the students' input on how to do this as well. And also to support that active engaged learning, it's going to be really important that students move. So if we think about where they've been for 6 months, they probably haven't been in their sports or had playgrounds open as much. So getting them moving and doing energizers or brain breaks in the classroom is going to really be important. The idea that somebody had of using a taped in area around their desk saying they have to stay in that area, but that's where they have to stay when they're going to do any movement or if they let them to stand while they're working. This is the same for virtual. As you're creating a schedule for students, build in those energizers and also build in those brain breaks. I'm going to have Karen link for you right now 10 days of morning meetings and 10 days of responsive advisory meetings for K-8 that have just been released by our organization. They're free resources that we'll share with you. You have to sign up and then you can have other people sign up as well. But the people that work for the Center for Responsive Schools wanted to support educators so much by creating these. Now, why am I telling you this now? Because with those morning meeting plans, look through some of the things that are part of that, and you'll come up with some ideas to do virtually and socially distanced energizers and activities that you can use for brain breaks. You can also anchor some of the activities that you can do later on for having a interactive learning structure happen during that time. And I saw several of you had that as a goal, like how can I keep them engaged? How can I do interactive learning structures? Well, you're probably preparing them how to do that virtually anyway, regardless if you're in person. So you're going to see a few things how to do that, but that's also listed in those resources. And just the feedback that we've had for the many participants that took this summer, yes, we did 4 days, 28 hours of virtual resources or workshops with people, was they really appreciated the ability to talk with others and to be engaged. So knowing that movement, you can do that even virtually with your students. All right, so think for a minute. Think about your classroom or your virtual classroom. What do you want to do more of or less of to support active and engaged learning? I was just reflecting on this one too, that during the times when you do those energizers and active learning, that's where you teach a lot of those social emotional competencies. You can teach cooperation, you can teach self-control, can have empathy for a person who maybe gets out first or whatever. So that becomes really important. And that sense of assertion. So build those in and know that they are instructional times for teaching social and emotional competencies. All right, our fourth goal is to use classroom organization to support the diverse developmental needs and styles, learning styles of our students. Yardsticks is one of our tried and true 4th edition books written by Chip Wood, is a great place to look. I would look at it every year when I was pre-pandemic, but now I want to pull it out even more as I look at the needs of our students at different ages. So as I'm making changes in my in-person classroom or virtual classroom, I want to think about what do the ages that most of my students are starting the school year represent and what happens as things change throughout the year. This is also that time to think of cultural differences in, representing and cultural responsiveness to our students as well. So I want to make sure my classroom represents my students. One example that a teacher shared with me, if you see the little guy down there where he's got the picture written on the heat bench or whatever, it's hard in the short amount of time we have to get to know the students sometimes. So she had an idea. She said, well, most of the students are going to be eating in my classroom. How about if I take a big white piece of construction paper and have the students design a placemat? And on that placemat, they can put everything that's important to them, draw, color, write words. And then she was going to take it down and have them all laminated. So she'd have a placemat when it was time to have the meal in their class. They'd get their placemat out. But while they were eating their meals or eating their snacks or their breakfast, she could walk around and notice different things that they've written or drawn on their placemat. And knowing that they're not going to last forever, that she could replace those on a regular basis so that she could learn about them as they're changing. And my aha was this, that you could do the same thing for the students who are working at home virtually as well. It's just another strategy to get to know students. It's also a great time for them to try out their markers or their pencils, or if you have them doing watercolors, it's another time to get to do a guided discovery in a meaningful way with students. And I think, a lot of schools are having somebody come and sanitize at the end of the day for whatever reason. Those probably could be left on their desks at the end of the day for sanitizing, I would think. And while you're doing this Think about being representative of the age levels of your students as well. One of the things we know about 9-year-olds is a lot of times they have a lot of somatic complaints. And any of you that have taught third or fourth graders kind of know that. And you can look again at yardsticks for some developmental things. We don't want them having to run down to the office each time they've got a tummy ache or need a Band-Aid. So make sure you've got that supply in a safe way in your classroom so that they have a place they can get those things and not have to leave the classroom. Another teacher shared with me that she was going to have each of the kids create a self-care kit or a calming kit. And in there, whether they're going to use it at quiet time or times when they were upset and just needed to reflect, she was going to teach them how they could journal or draw in a journal and have that in this Ziploc bag that she was going to have for them. Maybe some squeeze toys or calming things that would be helpful for them as well. And she was going to teach them how to use them. But they would be in that safe area for them to be right there. The last thought somebody shared with me on this one too is the gift of COVID and doing virtual instruction that we would have never done otherwise is we can learn a lot more about our children. So some of the activities people have done is say, bring something from home into the screen that shows that's meaningful for you. Or show me a picture of somebody in your home that's important to you. So as we do that, we can learn about the different cultural experiences that students have as well. And that's where we partner with parents because a lot of times they have things that they want to share with us to bring into our classrooms. All right, take 30 seconds again to reflect more or less on each of these. One of the goals of classroom organization, the responsive classroom approach, is to help students develop an independence and a responsibility and cooperation for care of the room. Now we know that that's going to be different. Many times we'd have community supplies or we'd teach kids out of the same bucket how to use some of the same supplies. That'll still be a practice, hopefully, that we'll do once we're not as concerned about passing on a virus. And at the same time, we can still teach those skills. One of the things I really encourage people to use is use a visual cue. So example on the right is an anchor chart that a teacher created. And I love the idea that she has these little strips to pull out in the bottom to change that. Beauty of anchor charts is you can do them with students and you can also change them up on a regular basis. Don't leave every anchor chart that you've created up though, because they'll lose meaning. So as you create an anchor chart, use it proactively to refer to before students start their morning choices, for that example. During the middle, if you need a reminder, just point or say, it looks like we have these choices right now. And you can also do it for reflecting. How did our morning choices work for you today? And think about maybe how those choices might be changing virtually, or how they might be changing with the safety measures that we have. If you're in person, chances are kids might be eating meals in your classroom, or they'll definitely be eating meals differently. They're going to eat meals regardless, no matter where they are. But we can use this to teach some of those same skills for eating meals appropriately, but also the cleanup. We've learned so much about technology in the last several months because we've had to. But I believe it's another one of those gifts where it's kind of opened up our world of technology where we're going to learn more things. Technology needs to be taken care of. So here's another time where we want to teach students how to be responsible and independent and taking care of their technology. And finally, with that virtual too, is using that time to help students problem solve on their own. So when we're struggling with using a piece of technology, we're struggling with some of the things, instead of being there to save them, help them to learn some of these skills on their own. And this is where you're not just going to use anchor charts, but you're going to use guided discovery. You're going to use interactive modeling, role play, all of those responsive classroom practices to teach these skills. And if I'm saying words that you don't know through the training that you've done, go to our website because we have videos of interactive modeling, guided discovery, and role play. So you can see what that looks like and help you support students to be successful. In the trainings I've done this summer, I've heard so many people excited about how to use those same practices, both in person, but also virtually to help their students be successful. All right, take another 30 seconds to jot down your thoughts. And finally, our last point, cultivate care of materials and equipment. So just a couple things here. Obviously, cultivating care of equipment is going to be them taking care of their things. So I'm going to talk in person, first of all. It's going to be really important, whatever we have, that they keep secure, they have it, and it's socially distanced, I guess, from others. One thought somebody had for that one is, this is a time where I'm really teaching life skills. And I want to teach this not just for caring for these pencils, but anything that's a material that's important for us to take care of. And it goes along with those academic behaviors. In order to do my job, I need to be prepared. It also goes along with being assertive and helping kids ask for help when they need it, possibly from others, and being responsible that they have the materials that they need. Couple thoughts. One on the right, obviously those are different kinds of tubs, but somebody shared an idea with me. They said, all my students are going to have a number. So this is 18, I'm going to have 18 tubs and 18 numbers. So all of their stuff is going to be in their tub. And when they get their tub out, it'll have what they need. They need to take care of it, clean it if need be, and put it back. That way, if student 4 moves out and a new student moves in, they will just be in number 4. And then she said, this is the greatest things. This is lined up kind of differently, but she has hers all along a shelf to keep them socially distanced when they need to get their tub. All right, 1, 5, 10, 20. Go get your tubs. Now they're apart. And then this one, I thought she was brilliant too. She said, when they go to specials, their specials are all going to do 1 through 20. And every class in the school is going to do 1 through 20 or whatever the number was. So when they go to specials and they find out a child is sick who used tub 3, well, they can remove tub 3 from everyone else that used them, because you can't have 300 sets of whatever they need in art or music class. And the other example on the left side there, okay, pencils are going to be a problem. Standing by the pencil sharpener and being socially distanced, well, pencil sharpeners are a problem regardless. But idea that somebody had was have a volunteer take all the pencils for the room home and sharpen them. So when they bring in their pack of 20 pencils, many times they're not sharpened, sharpen them, put them in a tub. Every day students check, they have 4 pencils. Yep, they're ready to go. At the end of the day, exchange old pencils for new pencils, and once a week there's somebody that sharpens all the old pencils as a volunteer. And keep pencil sharpeners at their desk. Brilliant if need be. The other thing was the idea of those visual cues there for a voice level. Sometimes, especially as we're spread out, some of those things aren't going to be as visible. Maybe having some specific visual cues right at your table or at their desk might be important. And we can do this virtually too. Think about last year when we sent things home, I had a teacher who was a aunt. She said, I go over and try to help my nephew. And it said on his list he was supposed to practice with these certain cards. They were all over the house. Okay, that happened. We're doing the best that we could. But now, even as virtual, we can teach those students how to take care of your materials, take care of your area that you're supposed to be in. We could even have kids take pictures of their learning spot. Before, if they were learning on the couch or learning in the virtual learning from the kitchen table and brothers and sisters were there, okay, we did the best that we could, but now we can be proactive and set students up for success proactively. And look through your list. So in your list, you've got some things that you want to change, more or less. Pick one thing that you're going to share in a breakout group. We're going to send you to breakout groups of, it'll be 4 or 5 people in the breakout group. As you get in the group, it's easier to start by if we could just look at your name tags on the bottom and decide whose first letter on their name on the bottom is first in the alphabet, goes first. Introduce yourself, and then you've got about a 1-minute share to share the goal you have and what you're hoping to do more of or less of. So I'm going to give that direction a second time as we get you ready for the breakout rooms. When you go to the breakout room, and if you prefer not to go to the breakout room, when you get sent to the breakout room, just come back in the main groups. Because sometimes people just like that 5 minutes to reflect on their own. But you'll be sent to a breakout room When you join in, each of you will share your goal that you have after a brief introduction and your one more and one less, not the whole list, just one more and one less. Questions that you have. So for those of you still in the big room or those of you watching virtually, do some thinking about what's a change that will work for you. So what's something you can do more of or something you can do less of that's going to be successful for you based on all those points. For those of you joining virtually right now as well and watching this on a recording, the links that I'm sharing for you are on the responsiveclassroom.org website under printables. So when you go to the menu on the top, educator resources, and if you go to printables, those resources will be available for you there. So hopefully you're getting some ideas that you can walk away with. I know having a large group webinar is different than having a workshop where we have a little bit more time to dialogue, but hopefully just in that small breakout group, you got a chance to chat just a little bit. All right, welcome back. And hopefully that brief amount of time to connect with another educator helped just reassure you that there's some really positive opportunities in the work that we're doing. And even though there's some challenges, those challenges are all going to help students see how we as adults persevere and make the best out of a tough situation. They've seen that happening in our world right now, and now they're going to get to experience it more directly, whether as a student in a virtual setting or whether they're with you. And they literally breathe your air. They experience you when they come to school. It's not the stuff. You could teach anybody if you have the teacher with that positive approach with the students, and regardless of the challenges that are there. I want to anchor us to end us up here with 3 of the practices of responsive classroom that will help you move forward with classroom organization. First of all, teach and practice those expectations. If we expect it, we need to teach it regardless, but there's going to be some new expectations. So use the practice of interactive modeling. If you haven't yet made a whole list of all the things that you need to teach and practice with, do that right after you get done with this workshop. And the other thing, if you're not sure what interactive modeling looks like or the practice again, go on our website because we have interactive modeling guides for you and videos of interactive modeling. I know I've had people say, gosh, if I'm in person, I'm going to interactive model how to hand wash. That was a big one. Another one they talked about is how to be assertive, to show people safe distancing in a kind way. Also, people in their virtual experiences saying, I'm going to show them how to go through the process of politely reminding someone to mute or unmute. So things that we would think of even adults could use sometimes. Use those visual cues. Don't overuse them, but be sure you use them. I don't have it here, but somebody had showed me how to make a flashcard that showed the mute sign and the unmute sign. So I don't have to keep saying it. I can just hold up that flashcard. If you've got those anchor charts, or you even make them with the slide when you're doing virtual learning, use those anchor charts proactively, reactively, and also use them meaningfully during instruction as well. And the last one, use your positive teacher language. Your teacher language is going to go further than almost anything else. A lot of times we're looking for tricks to get kids to do things appropriately. If you could just step back out of your stress for a minute, out of your worry, and just invest in reinforcing language. If you're going to pack your school bag full of as much stuff you need to be successful in school, pack it full of reinforcing language. Take a moment to notice, wow, look at how we're all managing to keep our masks on even though we're hot and tired today. Or proactive reminding or reactive reminding. Who can remind me what social distancing is going to look like when we're in the hallway walking from here to the bus line? And redirecting, brief, stop, mask cover nose and mouth. So anchor on that language, be proactive, think about what language is going to help you. And give yourself time to have silence too. Even as I do this webinar, I have this tendency to want to just talk the whole time through. But give yourself some time to just be silent and take care of yourself. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up with just a few resources that we have. Some of these you've seen before. The first 6 weeks and building an academic community are the beginning texts that we have, elementary and also for middle school. What Every Teacher Should Know series has a lot in there about starting the school year up for K-5 classrooms. Quick coaching guides are tools that have been in place. We have some new ones that are coming out. You'll see classroom organization has been in place, real helpful hint for just reminding and working together as a staff. But then creating a welcoming classroom environment, and several have an equity stamp that we're focusing on as well. So make sure we're looking through that lens. And finally, stay in touch. Feel free if you want to reach out to me through my email or join on the responsiveclassroom.org website if you haven't signed up for our emails yet. Guessing you might have because you got into this webinar. But if not, do that. And there's also then a discount that you can get for purchases after you sign up. And we stay connected through social media. Our organization has a great way for us to stay connected by sending things out, but more importantly, the community of responsive classroom teachers has a way of staying connected with us by giving this feedback to us as well. So thank you for letting me come into your homes for this hour. And I hope our paths, if they haven't crossed, will cross again. I'm going to stay on for about 10 minutes after the webinar. So if there's anybody that has any questions or concerns or thoughts you want to share, otherwise I want to just wish you the best start to the school year, and know that what you give is definitely something that's important to every person, every child, every adult that you work with. So thank you for all you do. Have a great school year.
Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
And if anyone is going to hang on to have any questions, if you want to pose some questions in the chat box, I'll be looking at those and kind of moderating those for Margie. So we've given you so much to think about, but we want to make sure if there's a lingering question you have that you came here to try to find an answer for, we can either support you now or find a resource to be able to connect you with to support you.
And thanks, Karen, for you took care of everything, so I really appreciate that as well. I believe this will be this has been recorded, so it will be available if there's somebody else who wanted to participate and couldn't. So that's available too. The 6 goals of classroom organization, that was a question. So I'll stay on and give you those 6 goals. So the first goal is welcome all children. And the second goal is value everyone's ideas and work. The third goal, support active, engaged learning. The fourth goal, support diverse developmental levels and learning styles. The fifth goal, foster independence, responsibility, and cooperation. And the last goal is cultivate care of materials and equipment. And Karen, thanks for responding a lot of the things that you're responding to as well. Definitely that idea of teacher language, power of our words is the best place to start. And then there's a great resource, the power of our words for middle school. Same information in a different way that's presented, that's real user-friendly for any teacher, but particularly for the middle school audience too. As far as resources for working with parents, all of our resources have some connection to working with parents, especially I know teaching self-discipline was one that was recently put out, teasing, tattling, defiance, and more. I know in our books, The First 6 Weeks and Building an Academic Community, they all have that connection to working with parents. And we're also realizing that we need an additional text for that. So there's a text being written and it's going to be in process right now, but I'm excited to see what that's going to look like as well.
And I see one about upcoming webinars. One thing to note and be on the lookout, we will be having webinars to help see you through the whole first 6 weeks, well, 7 of school. So we will be having a webinar pretty much each week. Be looking out if you sign up for this. That next week's webinar is really focusing around like our teacher language or teacher leadership style. Then we'll have one like skills to important to keep in mind, modeling. We'll have an additional one which will focus on how do you create these engaging learning communities as we're getting back in, and another that will focus on how do we handle missteps and preserve, discipline with dignity in this trying time that we're all facing and the constraints that we have. So just be looking out. We're trying to hang right there with you these first 6 weeks of school to provide some things, but not give you so much to think about, because we also know that it's overwhelming, all the things you need to think about. So we're trying to hang on little by little with all of you.
And we appreciate all of you so much. I think Erin just had a question too about when you have some students in person and some students virtually, and whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, the challenges to that. I think that's an approach that we're all trying to figure out as we go. I know we just had one of our presenters do a Zoom workshop for a whole week that way, with some in the Zoom screen and some that she had in person. And I would say with that one, do some trial and error and work with your colleagues as well, because I know my colleague that shared that approach, we're doing things she hadn't even thought of that were important. So a lot of times when we're in Zoom, they just see our faces, but for them to do a morning meeting, she switched it around so that the students could see, the people on Zoom could actually see the students that were at home. And then when they were sharing, they came up to the screen to share as well. So I think it's going to be a trial and error to try to figure that one out. Fortunately, I haven't had to do that yet. So other questions or thoughts out there? Are there resources for parents on our website? We have a number of resources. If you go into educator resources and in the search item, you put in parents and there'll be some information that's there. Our website has articles that are pretty much written all by practitioners. So teachers, principals, facilitators of this work that have added articles to the website. So thank you for your interest in that though. Other thoughts that you have? I love how you guys are staying on.
And I will add, Margie, a great thing to share if you are in the hybrid or working a virtual. It could be great to order a 30-pack of those yardsticks pamphlets, because parents are at home, they know their children, but it could be great as they're trying to help them really navigate those spaces and navigate and remembering like, oh yeah, they are 5. This is how this is going to look. And just so that can be a great resource for parents as they're trying to think about how they're setting up their space, how they're setting them up for learning. That's a good thing that schools can do for them.
It makes me think we need to offer one more webinar for parents.
We need to add that to the list, right?
Add it to the list. You got it. And if you have thoughts and you just want to unmute and ask them, feel free. I don't know, Karen, did you see any other questions up there that? Yeah, the yardsticks pamphlets are on the website. And if the cost prohibits you from getting them, sometimes teachers will just send a note home to parents. Okay, these are my, for those of you that have 5-year-olds, here are some thoughts of what to remember developmentally. And I took this from the resource yardstick. So they have a place to go for them if they're interested in more, but the pamphlets are so well done. I know as a principal, I purchased them for people and the parents wanted to like laminate them because they're so well done. So Aaron, to the same idea, or is that M? M, the same idea of having a webinar with games and energizers while 6 feet apart. Take a look at those resources for morning meeting and for RAM, because even though if you teach, let's say 3rd grade, look at what's in there for kindergarten through 8th grade, because you can gather different ideas that can be used both for activities, but also for energizers. So take some ideas from there. Thanks, Karen.
And I also want to point out and kind of put a save the date too, because as I said, we're going to try to walk you through these first 6 weeks of school for seven of as you're kind of coming in, but also in November, we are also circling back and we are going to have a social emotional learning conference, which will be virtual, and we'll have a chance for practitioners after they've kind of settled in their space to share some more ideas. So let you get in, get started, but then we're going to come back again in November to be there for you as well. And, all the one-day options are also virtual. So as you're settling in, we can have a great way to really, as you're looking at morning meeting and some other things, some different ways to adapt. We have those one-day options too for you. But we're going to try to be right there with you all throughout this. It's a learning curve for all of us. There was a resource about supporting mask wearing. I would point to that morning meeting resource with the COVID morning meeting resources. It gives some good information on different ways to focus and how you can actually build out the morning meeting to help students get adjusted to that. So you're, again, teaching some of the social and emotional skills while students are sharing during morning meeting. And so it really kind of highlights how to start introducing and pulling that through in the morning meeting. So it's a good place to turn to.
And I've had teachers, when I've done the summer workshops, really reflecting on the practices of role play and interactive modeling when it comes both to wearing the mask, but being assertive to remind people of when you feel like they're not social distanced enough, or if they're not wearing their mask, how to do that politely. They also connected with that idea of that looks like, sounds like chart, whether you do it as a T or as a Y, looks like, sounds like, feels like, because they're realizing that these are all new skills for all of us. So how can we support students with empathy with these same skills? The other great ideas I was hearing from people are connecting how all of us are contributing to a global health problem to other global problems that really seem abstract to them. This has been so real because wearing a mask is them helping others. But what are other things? And for little kids, they talked about littering. I've had kids, worried about straws in the ocean. Okay, so what's a little thing you can do when they know, okay, if I'm not using straws, I'm helping ocean animals. If I'm wearing a mask, I'm helping the world. So making those connections was powerful. Thank you for that resource. Another thought that somebody had, and I should have shared it before I thought of this, is do you know where you go everywhere right now and you see all of the pre-made posters about social distancing and you kind of ignore them, or all the hand washing ones we saw for the longest time? If you can get your students involved in making those posters or taking their photos and being in them, and they can make them, if you're virtual, they can do that for home too. And it gets them writing, using their tools, whatever it is that would be helpful. All right, feel free. I know there's just a few of us left, but feel free to unmute if you have questions or want to chat. Samantha, I'm about to take a look at the article. That's a great question about the hopes and dreams and the rule generation. We've had some good conversations about that and feel the feeling I get from a lot of the educators is we need to do that even more by not just gathering the hope and dream, like sometimes you do in a class and you get it on the bulletin board and you leave it there, but you might come back to it, that we can use our digital tools to display hopes and dreams, to create a portfolio. So I heard one teacher say that after they did their hope and dream, they were supposed to start making a page of a portfolio, whether it was a notebook or they made it more like a folder where they had that, and that they would use that when they'd have their ongoing meetings with students. So if my goal for third grade is to read a chapter book independently from beginning to end, and I would refer to, okay, how are you doing on that goal, when I would connect with them as well. And then the other thing with that was that parents could then be involved. So if you're sending an email or a message out to parents, sit down at this time with your child's portfolio, look at what they've been doing to work toward their hope and dream. Same thing with rules. So as you create that rule generation process, whether you're giving rules and reflecting what it's going to sound like or look like, or doing the whole process of what kind of virtual, I would love you to do this together, what kind of virtual community is going to be helpful for us to achieve all our hopes and dreams for this year. Do that same process you would do with students, but then it's really the power of keeping it alive. I've seen teachers find different ways to build that rule into their activity for their morning meeting. So you're going to act out that morning meeting, or find something in your house that's going to represent that that rule for your morning meeting. So if our rule is respect others, what's something in your house that you can bring and show in the picture that would show that? Any thoughts you have on that one, Karen?
I just had put in the chat box, we actually, I was like, I knew I was forgetting one when I was naming all the webinars. We're going to have a whole webinar session on that, so you'll be able to dive in that. That's a great way to get started, but we're going to have a whole webinar session on that to really kind of dive into that and really think about ways to support. The short of it, I would say now, as I see some people who are South Bend were joining me earlier for some things I was doing with them. This may be the year you kind of want to start with some existing rules, just because it's so new, just to kind of have some existing rules in place and try them on and explain to students that we're just trying these rules on, and still go through the hopes and dreams process and still do that to come back to see if those rules still work, but just have a place that you can come to and say, if we're going to be respectful, what's it going to look like, sound like, feel like? Because, we're at the place where we need to find that with everyone, and we may not know. And they may name some things, as we know with students, they may name some things that we may not think of. So it's all hands on deck with that.
Well, and this whole process of making a community. Yeah. Karen, do you know if the webinars are listed in one place?
The webinars are all going to be in in the same place as you go for our courses. It'll say courses, workshops, webinars will be in there. You'll be looking again for the emails to come out the same place you found this webinar. They will be there one by one and be posted.
So they're on our website right now?
Yes, they will. Yeah, they're not all listed. They'll be listed one by one as they become available.
Well, again, thank you all for joining in and your great questions. Have a great school year, and hope to see you in a future webinar.
Thank you.
You're
Great.
welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. And thanks for staying on.
Hi, sorry. Was this Eastern time?
Yes. It's going to be recorded.
Okay.
Get the recording.
Oh, I've had so many today and I've gotten them.
I know.
I'm sorry. So I'm sorry I zoomed in late.
Okay, that's okay. It'll be recorded. Okay, it'll be
Perfect.
recorded. Okay.
Thanks, Myra.
I know. I just feel for you. I just want to go. Like, what can I go do for you right now? I know that feeling is.
Oh man. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, okay, hey, I know we have a few people on, Margie, but would you be able to send the recording link to Desi?
Absolutely.
And then she should have the list of resources, but we probably want to add yardsticks in there, the
Okay.
yardstick templates, so.
Sounds good.
Do that. All right, I'll talk to you later. Go have a
All
wonderful
right.
evening.
Thanks, you too,
Bye.
Karen. Have a good
All
night.
right,
Thanks for
you too.
everything.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.